Bible did not arrive by facts from heaven. The Bible is the product of man, my dear, not of God. The Bible did not fall magically from the clouds. Man created it as a historical record of tumultuous time, and it has evolved through countless translations, editions, and revisions. History has never had a definitive version of the book. A very good morning to you all, ladies and gentlemen, and also good afternoon and good evening to the other parts of the world. Today is the third day of the International Mega Lecture Series organized by All India Forum for English Students, Scholars, and Trainers, IFEST, and I, Avinash Kaushik, your host, your coordinator for the day, welcome you all wholeheartedly. I started with Bible, or rather I would like to say I started with something which speaks about Bible. Why? Because the lecture which we have today is about religious texts, is about scriptures, and those are something which are pretty evident in terms of lying out in the open in front of us, in terms of having an application, but then they remain so unexplored, they remain so in a way hidden, in a way masked, in a way veiled, that we really don't take into account of them, in terms of understanding them, in terms of paying heed to them, in terms of associating ourselves with how a particular text can be seen or can be read as well. And so the lecture today will deal with how they are important, or how they can be in a way associating our life in terms of understanding them, in terms of having a special place. And to do that, we have our speaker for the day, Dr. Kulwant Singh. And just to brief you all about him, Dr. Kulwant Singh is presently working as an academic counselor at Indira Gandhi National Open University, Lucknow. He has pursued his MPhil and PhD from University of Lucknow. His area of interest is nature studies and religion. He has served as a lecturer at City Academic Degree College, Lucknow from 2012 to 2017. He is also the Secretary of Expressions in Languages and Arts Foundation, Lucknow, a national level organization working to promote arts and culture. Sir, we are absolutely honored to have you here as our guest speaker, and I would like to hand over the session to you now. Over to you, Kulwant sir, it's all yours.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. And it's a pleasure being here. And my topic of discussion today will be ecology in scriptures. And I'll be taking just a second. So should I start?
Yes, sir, you can start.
Okay. And I'll be looking into some major scriptures of the world, especially the Vedas, the Quran, the Bible, and the Guru Granth Sahib. So we know that the discourse of nature is quite contemporary, but at the same time it is equally ancient. And nature and human nature have been the concern of literature and other aesthetic pursuits over the centuries, and have cut across cultures and regions. So what intrigues me into looking at this topic rather is that in the current scenario, we know well how we are faced with serious ecological crisis. And this crisis is the result of our tampering with nature in the name of economic progress and development. So starting with ecology, now ecology means the relation of plant and living creatures to each other and to their environment. So in other words, we can say that it is a branch of biology that deals with the relations of living organisms to their surroundings. Now these ecological studies, they include many concepts like deep ecology, shallow ecology, but what my focus today will be on, it is spiritual ecology. And this spiritual ecology is a religious response to our present ecological crisis. It is actually a field that joins ecology with the awareness of the sacred among creation. It involves responses to environmental problems that embrace religion, the religious awareness and practices. And the principle of spiritual ecology is very simple and clear. And to resolve such environmental problems like depletion of species, global warming, and overconsumption, humanity must examine and reassess their underlying attitudes and beliefs about the earth and their religious as well as physical responsibilities towards the earth. So spiritual ecology is not primarily based on any single faith or spiritual path, rather the primary recognition of the sacred nature of all creation. So in short, we can say that it refers to the intersection between religion, spirituality, and nature. Then religion, it wants to keep a keen correlation between the flora and the fauna and human life. And it is seen as an important cultural influence that can promote ecologically responsible behavior. Further, religion has an important influence on people's habits and behaviors as well regarding nature and social issues. And we know that all religious preachers, sages, and saints of the past, they have preached and propagated the maxim that human beings should establish a spirit of harmony with nature, tolerance, and kindness as well. But in spite of such ominous forebodings of all religions and their messengers, what we see is that man's prey on nature, it continues unabated and unimpeded. So in a way, nature has been desacralized. Now, what happened earlier was that earlier man dehumanized man, but now he dehumanizes nature. So he is in fact indulging in ecocide. So, and we have, and in the recent past, and even in the past few years and or a decade or so, we can say that we have been witnessing very distressing incidents resulting in disasters in different parts of the world. So we can say that we are entering an epoch that will be dominated by a clash between man and nature, because nature is not going to tolerate the usurping of its resources silently. So because it has in store severe punishments like acid rain, showers of ultraviolet rays through the ruptured ozone layers, desertification, droughts, floods, earthquake, pollution, greenhouse effects, the extinction of rare animals and plant species, and so on. So humanity today, it stands at the crossroads, like where it has to decide and choose either to move with nature or behave prejudicial against nature and face harsher punishments in future that can even lead to the extent of its annihilation. So in the present scenario, what we see is that the condition of nature has become so that no further enjoyment is possible. And this perhaps has become a cause of worry for many. And the list of imbalanced handling of the earth and its resources is increasing day by day. And the concern, therefore, is how to tackle this mishandling of nature by man, and to find ways to modify human behavior at all levels when dealing with the environment. Then religion, and it is worth noting that religion and environment, now they are integral to each other. Religion instills the recognition that human life cannot be measured by material possessions. And since time immemorial, religion has shown man the right path to live peacefully on the earth. And harmony with nature has been the peculiar feature of all ancient cultures. But however, unfortunately, these cultures, they could not withstand the invasion of a materialistic civilization, which regarded nature as a commodity that could be used for man's comfort and profit. So this materialistic civilization has resulted in an environmental catastrophe, you can say. But modern knowledge today is not seen as enough to solve the environmental problems, because it concentrates only on the effects and not the cause, which is the knowledge itself. So what is needed is actually a fundamental a reorientation of humanity in nature, a new knowledge which is more subjective, holistic, spiritual, beyond limited and destructive modern confines. So in this sense, we can say that religion, it can act as the conscience of humanity, highlighting the deficiencies of human thought and action and inspiring new attitudes and actions. V.C. Shaw, in her essay, The Tragedy of Broken Relationship, in the book Thorns in the Garden Planet, she says that, I'll quote, beyond Eden, the thorns of self-interest would become an ever-increasing ecological problem, finally extending even to the outer space. So, man's refusal to center his life in God, it actually continues to destroy his communion with creation. So, what we observe is that the attitudes and values that shape people's concept of nature, they come basically from religious views and ethical practices. And religions have not only determined the way we perceive the world, but have also set roles that individuals play in nature. And every religious tradition, we know that while upholding the supremacy of human being, it has condemned the needless exploitation of living as well as non-living beings. So there has to be a comprehensive re-evaluation of the human-earth relationship for human beings to continue as a viable species on this increasingly degraded planet. And since times immemorial, religion has been a part of human life. And the great spiritual masters from all religions, they have taught that we need to adopt higher qualities of love, mercy, generosity, kindness. But these higher qualities develop a deeper reference to our spiritual nature. And therefore, in this aspect, religion can be thought of as a vehicle to support our spiritual development and our reconnection with divinity. And since nature is the cradle of human civilization, religions of the world have given adequate guidelines for the preservation of nature. So my concern here is not to say that religions talk about the exploitation of nature. Rather, what my mode of investigation is to work into scriptures as to how religions, they give importance to the cause of environment. So moving to the first major scripture, I would start with the Vedas. Now we see that Hinduism has always been an environmentally sensitive philosophy. The Vedas, they are full of reference for all life and nature, and they give adequate guidelines on how to preserve and deal with nature's elements. We have many sacred texts like the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, the Purans and the Smritis. They contain the most initial messages for safeguarding the environment and maintaining ecological balance. So no aspect of ancient Indian culture, literature and religion is devoid of environmental concerns. In fact, Hinduism, it accords nature a higher status as regards man. The ancient people, they lived with nature and worshipped them in actuality and symbolically. We find lots of information about the relationship between man and nature, human behavior, and indebtedness towards nature from the Vedas and the Upanishads. So even in the earliest traces of Indian culture, we find examples of Indians bowing heads in reverence to natural elements, and which is quite frequent. And the Vedas and other traditional literary and cultural works, they present thousands of references to respect and realize the importance of natural objects. And the Aryans, they made serious efforts to conserve the environment. And we find several elements of nature that are worshipped and have been given the status of gods and demigods. And we find many prayers and hymns addressing different natural objects like sun, earth, fire, water, air, and so on. And these were written and recited as an endeavor to shield the environment. And even when we look at the epic age of Indian culture, we find that nature continued to be an essential part of Indian socio-religious life. Like Lord Ram and the Pandavas, they spent a major part of their lives in the forest. The three gods, Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, they are also depicted to emphasize the environmental concerns of Hindu mythology. Now, Brahma is seen to be seated on the Palash, Vishnu resides on the lotus, and Shiva on the banyan tree. So the Vedas, they mention about the 5 great components of nature, namely the space, air, fire, water, and earth. They are considered the basis of a unified web of life. And these 5 great elements, also called the Panch Mahabhutas or the Panch Tattva, they created a web of life that is depicted in the arrangement and interrelatedness of the universe and the human body. Like a sacred text certifies this statement through one of its verses by stating Chit Jal Pavak Gagan Samira Panch Rajit Ati Adam Sarira. So according to Hinduism, these 5 great elements that constitute the environment are all derived from the primal energy. And it connects each of the elements to one of the 5 senses. Like the human nose, it is expounded to earth, sorry. Tongue is expounded to water, eyes to fire, skin to air, and ears to space. Now, this connection between our senses and the components, they form the basis of man's relationship with nature. Further, the philosophy of Hinduism, it asserts that nature and environment are not outsiders. Rather, they are an inseparable part of our existence and comprise our very bodies. This relationship is natural because humans cannot live without it. And the Vedas mention that just like the universe, as we discussed above, the human body is also made of 5 important elements of nature. So they compared the outer world with the human body, stating that the quantity of these elements present in the outer world is the same as present within the human body. For example, just like 2/3 of the earth consists of water, the same amount of water is present in the human body, more or less. So the way deficiency of this component in the body leads to some or the other disease and thereby disturbs the balance. Similarly, deficiency of pure water can disturb the balance of this earth. Let's take another example. Like it is said that the number of hair which are there on the human body, the same amount of trees are supposed to be there on the land. So if there is any disturbance in the proportion of any element, it can result in imbalance and cause problems to living beings. And the same is true for all elements of nature, whether within the body or on this earth. And the Upanishads, they state that after creating the universe, the Creator entered into each and every object in order to help maintain an interrelationship. And this view can perhaps strengthen the veneration for all forms of life. Now, the Rig Veda, it mentions that environment on several occasions. And a verse from the Rig Veda, it states that sky is like the father, the earth is the mother, and the space is as the son. So the universe consisting of these 3 elements is like a family. And any kind of damage done to any of these, it throws the universe out of balance. And the Vedas also stress on the utility, importance, and preservation of the solar world and provide useful ideas to keep this world free from pollution. And in many mantras of the Vedas, we find that the sky has been described as the father and earth as the mother of all creatures, earthly creatures and plants. And space is considered as the umbilical cord that connects the sky and the earth. So it is a source that carries energy from sky down to the earth, and therefore it needs to be free from all sorts of pollution so as to establish a healthy link between the two. Further, talking about the importance of earth, we know that earth has been accorded has been given the importance of mother and goddess, and it contains an inexhaustible treasures of riches which are protected by the solar body, trees, plants, waters, rivers, and forests, etc. So if we destroy these protectors, we are adversely affecting the riches that are there underneath. Moving further, a mantra of the Atharvaved, it mentions that the earth that we dig up should be filled again. And we find prayers addressed to Mother Earth in the Atharvaved, which conveys this very effectively, where it says that whatever I did from thee, O earth, may that have quick growth. O purifier, may thee not injure thy vitals or thy heart. So this is the kind of respect that has been given to earth. And not only this, in the Atharvaved, we find an entire hymn of 63 verses called the Prithvi Sukta, which has been in the praise of Mother Earth. Then the Rigved and the Atharvaved, they mention that the earth is wrapped around by a protective layer, which in modern science we call as the ozone layer. So here the earth is taken for an embryo, and the ozone layer is its protective membrane. So to harm this ozone layer is as destructive for the earth as damaging the membrane is for the embryo. So again, in this case, we find a comparison with the body. So similarly, we find many verses that pay respect to the elements and beings of nature like trees, animals, fire, thereby showing reverence to them. Like, for example, Agni is a very significant deity in the Vedas, and the Vedas, they mention that fire is a great cleanser of the ecosphere because it destroys impurities and pollution. Similarly, the trees and plants also have been of great importance in the Vedas. The Atharvaved, it says that the powers of God are vested in trees and plants, and they provide life force to man, as we all know, and also protect him. And the Matsya Puran, it rightly equates one tree to 10 suns in serving the interest of the people. So this implies that one tree renders as much beneficence to mankind as 10 suns do during their whole lifetime. Further, the Satapat Brahm, it also mentions that trees and vegetations are the incarnation of Lord Shiva, the benefactor of the world. And Yajurved, which is devoted to Rudra, Lord Shiva has been called the master of trees and vegetations. And the speciality of Lord Shiva is that he drinks poison to spare men from its ill effects. And in lieu of it, it yields nectar for their benefit whenever he is in a benevolent mood. So similarly, we see that trees and vegetations, they drink poison. They inhale the carbon dioxide, and in return they yield the life-giving oxygen to us. So in other words, they act like Shiva. But on the other side, it is to be remembered that when Shiva assumes the opposite role, he becomes the malevolent destroyer. So similarly, if trees are fell and consequent pollution increases, so all-round ruination is inevitable. So we see that an essential part of Hindu theology also relates to the treatment of animal life. And because it is the belief that God himself incarnated in the appearance of various species like fish, tortoise, boar, dog, and one of his incarnation is that of the Narasimha, that is man-lion. And not only this, God in the incarnation of Ram, he was closely associated with monkeys, and as Krishna, he was surrounded by cattle. And these species are so therefore accorded reverence even now. Then talking about water, the Vedas say that it's a powerful media of purification and a source of energy. And they give several guidance and instructions to prevent water from being polluted. And the rivers are also considered sacred. So we see that the Vedic literature, it contains many examples and verses related to the importance and protection of the elements of nature in itself. And this in itself is an indicator how valuable nature is considered in Hinduism. Moreover, one thing is worth noting that the Shanti part of the Yajurveda, it prays to the elements of nature to impart Shanti or peace to the people. But they can impart peace only when they are kept free from pollution. So, along with what we have discussed so far, there are certain other concepts in the Hindu philosophy that can be related to nature. So, one of them is one of the philosophy is which holds great significance and relevance in the current scenario is the three principles, namely the Yajna, Dan, and Tapas. That is sacrifice, giving, and penance. Now, these are the three ecological principles for the replenishment of the earth. Through Yajna, we replenish the earth. That is, whenever we take, we must consider whether we have spared something for others, that is, for nature, for the poor, and for future generations. So this is sacrifice. Next comes Dan, that is to give. Now, this is the replenishment of the society. Just as we take from nature, we need to sacrifice here as well. So we must not just be consumers and must also give something in return. Like humans, they receive wonderful knowledge, tradition, culture, religion, and wisdom from the great teachers of the past. So they should not just consume it, and in fact, they must do something to give it back. The term Dan, it does not just imply money. Dan can be given in the form of money, labor, intelligence, knowledge, time, whatever one has. So this maintains the ecology of the society. Finally is the principle of tapas, that is self-control. Now this replenishes the soul and one's own internal spiritual environment. Therefore, one must replenish one's own environment. And if, say, someone is fasting or takes a vow of silence, that we call Maun Vrat, so that is tapas. So with these three principles of sacrifice, giving, and self-control, one keeps replenishing the total environment. Another concept that is of quite significance here is that of Dharma and Karma. Now, what does Dharma mean? It means righteous duty. That is duty towards humanity and God's creation. And this comprises an important part of Dharma. So we see that while all other species, they conduct Dharma of their kind, unfortunately, it is only humans who act in an adharmic manner. For example, it is the true nature of a lion to hunt when hungry. It is the dharma of fire to burn. It is the dharma of trees to give shade, fruits, oxygen, and protection to human beings and birds and animals. Sun, it gives light and energy continuously. It is performing its dharma. The air is flowing. So all these are performing their dharma. And similarly, it is the true nature of a person to act in a righteous way, in spite of the fact that he may be capable of both the good as well as the evil tendencies. But it doesn't happen so. In our daily life, you would have never heard anyone saying, addressing any bird or animal or any other element of nature that, hey dog, you better become a dog. But you would often hear people saying to others that you better become a human being. So, why is that said? Because it is only we humans who are behaving in an adharmic manner. And the concept of this dharma is further linked with the concept of karma, which means to do or to act. But in a broader sense, it also applies to the effects of such action. So we can say that the environmental pollution is one example of karma of those people who thought they could keep exploiting nature without realizing the consequences of their actions for future generations. And this perhaps will continue till humans realize. Then another concept that holds great importance in Hinduism is that of, there are various other concepts, and I would just mention them in brief. One is the Sarvabhut Hit, which means the welfare of all. And a righteous citizen should act for the welfare of all. That is, he should enhance the common good of all together. And this is related with the concept of Sarv Kalyankari Karma, which denotes a deed that results in the welfare of all. So this leads to the concept of caring for others. Similarly, we have other concepts like that of the Vasudev Sarvamiti, seeing the presence of God in all, and treating his creation with respect without harming others. Then we have the concept of Vasudev Kutumbakam, which means the earth and its extended family, and this includes humans as well as other living beings. So having gone through the philosophy and ideology of this faith and the traditions, there arises a question that in spite of such religious and spiritual heritage, what are the reasons behind the present environmental crisis that we are facing? So we can try to derive some answer from it, that the Hindu scriptures, now they strongly emphasize that human beings must improve their quality of life. And often we find a very popular prayer which is uttered in the temples and homes, like Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina, Sarve Bhavantu Naramya. That is, may everyone be happy, may everyone be free of disease, may no one suffer from miseries. So perhaps, it is possible that the idea of happiness may have been misinterpreted and linked with material happiness, which has resulted in people polluting the environment in the name of progress. Also, there are also other influences like the Aryan cultures and values, which have damaged India's environment, and they are the forces of materialism, consumerism, corporate greed, and all these have acted against the maintenance or a resurgence of respect for nature in India. Further, there are passages within the Hindu religious traditions that encourage the acquisition of wealth in certain contexts. So one must keep in mind that in the Hindu hierarchy, goddess Earth is of less importance than Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth and good fortune. And Lakshmi has traditionally had a far greater hold on people's faith and aspirations than goddess Earth. And the quest for wealth therefore seems to be more intense than reverence for the earth. So therefore in this materialistic world, where good fortune seems to depend on consumer spending, industrial growth, we find that the goddess Earth, it faces stiff competition. So therefore, it is believed that a rightful interpretation and an overall understanding of the sacred texts, rather than a selective approach that suits our needs, can be helpful in generating awareness and organizing action among the followers of this faith. So this may perhaps hold the key to avoiding ecological tragedy. So what can be done is that hagiographic literature, dharmic models, and stories of gods and goddesses that relate to the importance of nature in the life of human beings, they need to be placed into service before we can actually make further progress in the real sense. Okay. Now, switching over to the Holy Bible, we see that the basis of the Christian understanding is the recognition that humans are created in the image of God. And they are the creation of God like all other creatures. And as such, they are joined with others through a relationship of solidarity. But this idea of solidarity of all creatures was in due course, it was sidelined by the idea of special position of humans and the dominion over others. So in continuation of this perspective, it was considered that nature has been created by God for human beings. It has instrumental value, but no intrinsic worth, and its value is only in relation to human beings. Somewhat the concept of shallow ecology, I would say. So the verses of the Genesis in the Bible, although they clearly explain that God created human beings in His own image, and He delegated the responsibility to these human beings to care for the natural world, that is the environment and animal kingdom. But somehow these lines were interpreted as giving people the right to exploit the environment and abuse nature. So the relationship of man with God and that with the earth is very prevalent in the Bible. But what humans do, that they primarily focus on their relationship with God and ignore the latter. So what we need to understand here is that the relationship with God, that it is about the relationship between God, each other, and God's creation. So it is like a triangle where God is at the top, then on one side is man and the other side is nature. So they are all interrelated. So it is about how we live with each other, because it is actually a covenant. So Christianity says that we cannot love God and ignore the earth, because Jesus' love is not just for human beings but for all creations equally. And that is why He said to His disciples in the Mark that go into all the world and preach the gospel to all creation. Thus, everything created by God, it needs to be loved and cared for. So the overall approach of the Bible towards the natural world has been summarized in the Psalms. The Bible further says that the earth is the Lord's and everything in it, the world and all who live in it. So this psalm is indicative of the fact that the earth and its beings, they have all been created by God and belong to Him. And the environment is God's gift to everyone, and therefore they have a responsibility towards it. So one should respect the intrinsic balance of creation. That is, he should not engage in a reckless exploitation of air, water, land, and other resources. In this regard, referring to the story of the parable of the talents, Jesus suggests that humans are expected not only to protect God's resources, but also to help them prosper and flourish. Moving further, I would like to draw your attention to a very important concept in the Bible, and that is of Sabbath, which means a day of rest. So in the context of environment, it means an ecological day of rest. And the ecological day of rest should be a day without polluting of the environment. For example, a day when we leave our vehicles at home so that nature too can celebrate its Sabbath. And so it is not only a day of rest for humans, but also the land and animals as well. So clearly, the Bible has no place for any oppressive anthropocentrism which is unsympathetic towards other creatures. So only when we realize the rate at which the whole environment is being polluted, do we realize that all creation, it needs rest. And once we admit the need for cleansing and renewal of our own inner environment, we perhaps appreciate the rest that the Creator planned and gave us with His blessings. So the declaration of a Sabbath of the land, it thus affirms that it affirms the Creator's concern for the preservation of the earth. So in spite of such clear teachings of the Bible, some believe that God has given the creation to exercise, their dominion and use it according to their wish, regardless of its impact upon the natural ecosystems. But this was not the case. God gave them the authority as stewards and not with any dominion mandate. So the term steward, it stands for responsible manager. A faithful and wise steward is one who manages the property according to his master's direction. So, but people either misunderstood the message in the verse, or they did deliberately and used nature for their selfish motives. And in a way, they did not only, in fact, it was like more of an abuse for nature rather than a careful use. And unfortunately, this trend still continues and causes grave ecological balance. So there is a need to revisit the sacred texts for a rightful interpretation of the idea, because Bible does not encourage exploitation. Further, now according to the Bible, the three important relationships of God, man, and nature. Now, the Bible says now these relations today we find that they have been broken, both outwardly and within us, and this rupture is actually a sin. And it has in turn distorted our mandate to have dominion over the earth, to kill it and keep it. So as a result, the originally harmonious relationship between human beings and nature has become conflictual. Now, I would make a reference of Thomas Berry, a cultural historian and Catholic thinker. He gives a very good concept and an example of how to deal with nature. Now, he reminds us of the fact in his work, Befriending the Earth. Thomas Berry says that originally the early church believed that there were two scriptures, the scripture of the Bible and the scripture of the natural world. And the followers were meant to learn as much about God through nature as through the sacred books. But somewhere along the line, they stopped reading the scripture of nature and focused only on the Bible. So Berry says that the ecological crisis of today needs to that we should focus our attention once more on the scripture of the natural world. He further points out with a very good example by saying that we are currently immersed in a crisis, which is like that of the passengers on the sinking Titanic. So ecological devastation, unsustainable resource extraction, climate change, they are all serious issues. But instead of trying to remedy our situation, we are sitting on the ship deck with our noses stuck in the Bible. He further says that here we are a planet which is being devastated. The manifestations of the divine, they are being lost, and we are still reading the book instead of reading the word around us. So what happens? He says that we will drown reading the book. So Berry is of the opinion that the need of the hour is to bring the preaching of the Bible into practice and act wisely, rather than just staying confined to reading. Then the Christian thought, it derives fresh insights. It can derive fresh insights from a rereading of the Bible with an ecological awareness and interpreting it contextually to uncover the hidden treasure. And the Bible, the biblical dominion of man, therefore, is no despotism. If Genesis authorizes mankind to rule nature, it authorizes only the kind of rule compatible with the Hebrew concept of the monarch, where they were considered to be answerable to God for the well-being of the realm. In this context, a quote by A.J. Leshane in his book Embracing Earth is of great relevance, which says that if we seek only the earth, we will lose all. But if we seek heaven, the earth will be saved. Further, the same context, Simon Rebecca Peter, in her book Green Church, she states that although the earth is the Lord's and fullness thereof, the mess is ours. And she observes that our focus for so long has been on humanity, which is a good thing, of course, but we have not paid attention to the health of the rest of the creation. We comfort people in distress, do fabulous work with responding to natural disasters, which are actually unnatural. But the problem is that we are not addressing the question that why these disasters are happening with such increasing frequency. So today, we need to accept that we all have contributed towards the disfigurement of creation, and therefore we need to regret the same. And solutions to these problems are needed not only in technology, but also in changes in humanity. Like consumption, it needs to be replaced with sacrifice. Greed needs to be replaced with generosity, and so on. So the Bible, it envisions a world which is free from materialistic greed and lust for money, and where the gifts of nature are freely available to all. So we can say that when we treat the natural world as the Bible, we are following a long line of spiritual masters who did exactly the same. So may we human beings grow in our ability to see and appreciate the natural world as an important way God speaks to us. Okay. So moving to the Holy Quran, to the reading of the Holy Quran, we see that the Islamic view of nature, now it is neither based on an ecocentric vision nor anthropocentric vision, but a theocentric, very God-centered approach, wherein it is believed that everything in the universe, it has been created by God. And nature stands as a symbol of His creation, and is therefore it is referred to as a sign, that is the ayat of Allah. Ayat is the name given to the verses of the Quran, which mean a sign or a symbol or a proof of the divine. So for the Muslims, the Quran is the ultimate deen guide, and in the Islamic faith, the environment is at par with humanity, since the Muslims believe that He created all. And many Muslim thinkers, they regard nature as the sacred book full of symbols and signs. And from its very inception, Islam offers a basis of ecological understanding, and the Quranic verses and the prophetic hadiths, they profess environmental protection and insist upon shielding nature from pollution and devastation. The Quran offers many references on the precious resources of nature like water, air, land, and so on, and strictly prohibits its wastefulness. Similarly, the hadiths, they give an account of Prophet Muhammad's concern for the protection of nature and the equitable use of resources by all. So the Holy Quran, it also advocates that men and nature, they are not opposed to each other. Rather, each draws energy and sustenance from the other. So God has created them with some purpose, and humanity should therefore respect the forces of nature to preserve the ecosystem. The Holy Quran, it deals comprehensively with all the components of the environment. And if we consider the environment as the earth and whatever takes place on it, we find that it has been mentioned in the verses of in the various surahs of the Quran. Ibrahim Ozdemir, in one of his work, he offers a totally different interpretation of the very first verse from the Holy Quran. He says that nature from the Quranic perspective can be seen best in the first revelations to the Prophet Muhammad, which he received on Mount Jabal al-Nur. So we know that the first verse was a command from God, which said, read, to which the prophet immediately responded, I do not know how. Then the angel Gabriel, the bearer of the revelation, he insisted, read. Then he repeated the command a third time, saying, "Read in the name of your Lord and Sustainer who created." So the point is that during those days, the question of literacy was not there, and there was no such text in any form to be read. So what was the meaning of the first holy command, read? So Ibrahim Ozdemir, he contends that reading here means a completely new way of looking at the world. And the key notion is that this reading should be in the name of our sustainer. So from the very foundation, it is thought that God is the only creator and sustainer who gives existence and meaning to everything. So therefore, all reality, it needs to be seen keeping this view in mind. Further, Islam as a way of life is also based on the concept of good. The surahs of the Holy Quran states in this regard that anyone who even slightly does good to others will get its fruit. And it also warns that any person who does even the slightest of an evil act will face the repercussions. So the Quranic idea of Muslim, it actually means submissive, that is, surrendering to the will of God. And since everything in the universe behaves in accordance with laws enacted by the God, the whole universe is therefore, it can be termed Muslim, that is, surrendering to God's will. But man is the only exception to the universal law, or he is the only one who is endowed with the free choice of obeying or disobeying the command of God. And he is the only one who does not subscribe to his nature and is reminded about the same by the Holy Book, something that we discussed in the Vedas. So we have certain concepts in the Islam that are of relevance, and I would like to put forward over here. One is that of Tawheed, which means unity, which is of great significance. And according to this concept, creation is a part of the oneness of God, and this totality is seen as defining the relationship of humanity to nature and God. Then another concept is that of the Khalifa, or we can say the vicegerent, or the Amana, that is the trust. So God is stated as the master of this world, and he has created man as his Khalifa. So it also means a deputy or inheritor or a trustee. So in the present context, it refers to one who inherits a position, and one who holds it responsibly and in harmony on behalf of its bestower. So as the Khalifa on earth, man must fulfill that trust that has been placed on him by God, by acting justly in accordance with the laws. So he should never cause corruption on land or any sort of mischief or misuse its resources. So if a human fails to fulfill this amana or the trust, he is said to be committing khiyana, which means betrayal of trust or hypocrisy. The third concept which I would like to mention here is that of the Mezan, which means balance, and a righteous balance. So as a Khalifa or a human being, he needs to create a balance. And he's supposed to follow the balance both in dealing with other men and in dealing with the environment. So this balance can be taken to mean the ecological balance. And it is quite clear that harmony between man and his environment is an integral part of the very concept of Islam. So along with these major concepts, there are certain other concepts also that I would just mention, like that of Tashkil, which means compliance, then Jamal, that is aesthetic, Adal, which means justice, Zarar, which means injury, Fasad, which means corruption, and so on. So we find that at every step, Quran has always given guidance and reminded its followers that they are not supposed to tamper with nature or do any mischiefs with land. And actually the excessive use of nature, of the bounties of nature, has been strictly prohibited. And so everything that Allah has created is exactly as he wishes it to be, and nothing has been created without any reason. So creation is therefore sacred. And Prophet Muhammad has said in this regard that the whole of this earth is a mosque, that is a place of worship. So we need to assess that how wise we humans can be when we pollute and exploit the earth, which is just said to be a place of worship. Significantly, the imagery that is used in the Quran for paradise is full of greenery, vegetation, flowing streams, gardens of delight rich in fruits of all kinds, and so on. In contrast, we find that the description of hell is that of a raging fire, scorching heat, boiling water, etc. So here we can infer that a green, eco-friendly earth is like a paradise, and the earth that has been oppressed by global warming is like a hell. So, so we are free to analyze and understand that what kind of earth do we want to live in a paradise or in hell. So the Quranic principles, not only this, they are equally compassionate for animals. And this is evident from the fact that there are numerous chapters of the sacred scripture that bear the names of animals, like Al-Bakara, that is the cow, Al-Nahl, the bee, and chapters named after the spider, the ant, and so on. So the Quran, it tells us, rather it guides us how to use the resources, but not to waste them by indulging in excesses, because God does not like wasters. So when we deal with the environment, we should bear in mind that it is not inexhaustible, and its capabilities and potentialities are limited. So that is what is called ecological capacity. Therefore, it is also said that preserving the environment is also a kind of worship. So worship in its overall meaning is not only confined to religious rituals, prayers, fasting, pilgrimage, but also the faithful abidance of the injunctions of Islam in all walks of life. So from this perspective, preserving the environment is also a kind of worship, and anyone who preserves nature is a real worshipper. So such thoughts and actions, they are seen as the jihad of humanity. That is the inner striving to purify oneself and behave correctly in a manner which promotes divine harmony. So what we need today is a global ethic approach to the environment. That is a green jihad. And the concept of green jihad means striving to fight for the green environment and generate awareness about the environment as a symbol of God's perfect plan and fruitful purpose. And Janardhan Kumar, in one of his articles, Islam and Ecology, he states that the core issue today is how to kill the germs of exploitation of nature that arises viciously in the minds of men. In other words, the human mind is equally polluted, and this pollution also needs to be checked simultaneously while making a check on the outside pollution. But the concept, a very important one I would like to emphasize over here, is that according to Islam, the real interpretation of the term kafir is one who disobeys the orders of God or does not abide by the teachings of Islam. So in the context of environment, we can say that one who does not follow the guidance of the Holy Quran on the conservation of environment and instead indulges in its disrespect and exploitation, thereby causing harm to nature, is kafir in the real sense of the term. So Islam thus provides a comprehensive model of environmental ethics, where at the same time man is the consumer and beneficiary, as well as the guardian and trustee of the environment. So he should therefore be considerate of what he is entrusted with. So these Islamic principles are awaiting a rereading and reinterpretation so that a Quranic environmental ethic appropriate to meeting the present crisis, it can be worked upon. Lastly, coming to the scripture of the Sikhs, the Guru Granth Sahib, I would say that the Guru Granth Sahib provides the much needed guidance for maintaining the ecological balance in the universe. The scripture declares that the purpose of human beings is to be in harmony with all creation, and that human domination is to be rejected. The Guru also states that the Almighty has not only created nature, but He also resides in it. Therefore, Sikhs believe that the visible form of God is nature or the environment itself. And we find various hymns in the Guru Granth Sahib that eulogize nature in its various manifestations as revealed in the creation process. So these hymns mention that God only plays the role of the creator. He not only plays the role of the creator, but is also the revealer and sustainer of the creation through it. So nature is the abode of God as well. The Guru Granth Sahib vividly explains the concept of ecology, and it provides guidance for maintaining the much needed ecological balance in the universe. So in fact, the scripture focuses on the concept of spiritual ecology. And the Holy Granth, it gives a clear explanation of the origin of life over the earth's surface, and it states that God established the earth as a home for Dharma, that is righteous duty. And he placed on this earth the various species of being. So keeping in view the above verses of the Gurbani that talk of the earth as a home for Dharma, there arises a question that human beings are expected to analyze and answer. Would human beings ever throw garbage in a Gurdwara or any such place of worship? Can the devotees can they ever think of polluting the air inside so that the worshippers have no pure air to breathe? Does the thought of dirtying the holy pond, or for that matter, using polluted water in the community kitchen, ever come to their mind? If the answer to all these questions is in the negative, then human beings need to contemplate seriously on the kind of treatment they are meting out to the earth, which actually has been considered a place of a pious place, and which, as the Guru tells us, was established by God as a home for Dharma. The Guru Granth Sahib further guides that air is our Guru, water the father, and earth is the mother. So can humans express their disrespect towards their Guru and parents the way they do to air, water, and earth? If no, then they need to realize that all these elements of nature, they are equally important and sacred and deserve due respect and care by the people. Further, the earth has also been considered as the symbol of bearing of the sufferings. So the earth, for the sake of her children, she absorbs all sorts of heat in it. And the Gurbani states in this reference that the month of Ashad, which is considered the hottest month of the year, the sun blazes in the sky, the earth suffers in pain, parched and roasted in fire. So this is the kind of pain that Mother Earth bears for us. And further we find that the Sikh Gurus, they built many Gurdwaras encircled by large pools which supported marine life, especially fish. So this was clearly an indication to live in harmony with nature rather than in conflict with it. So Sikhism believes that the environment can only be preserved if the balance created by God is maintained. And the problem of cultural and ethical pollution has become a major problem due to pollution in the mind. So it is important to also deal with the pollution that is there in our mind, which instigates us to, in the context of environment, which instigates us to tamper with nature or exploit it for our selfish motives. On this issue, Kulwant Singh in his book Guru Nanak and Ecology, he opines that though all ecological elements were created for the needs of the man, but he, instead of remaining need-oriented, he became greed-oriented animal. And this greed of human beings has created physical, cultural, and spiritual ecological crisis. The lust for wealth and power has led man to exploit these resources imprudently. Further, the Sikhs, they pray daily and ask for the welfare of all, that is the Sarbat da Bhala. And this welfare of all, it includes not only the living and non-living beings, but also the visible and invisible things in the universe. So to add to this, as far as consumption is concerned, Sikhism prescribes an attitude of contentment, non-domination over the other, humility, sharing of resources, and welfare of all. Such an approach, therefore, it subdues the spirit of competition and gives rise to the spirit of cooperation. So Sikhism is quite open to the dynamics of nature. And the Guru, he talks about the different seasons through the Baramaha hymns. We also call the calendar hymns in the Guru Granth Sahib. In these hymns, the cyclic flow, the beauty and the ferocity of nature has been shown, which makes the heart of the Guru more vibrant and alive to the supreme reality that is permeating all around. So it has given Guru Nanak, Guru Nanak gives a beautiful account of nature in this composition, wherein he describes the different seasons of the year, like the spring, winter, summer, the rainy season, and the changing facets of earth, sky, mountains, clouds, trees, and other resources, thereby associating them with the human moods and inspiring man to seek spiritual exaltation. So all these verses, they are indicative of the fact that how deeply the Guru's thinking is embedded in the natural phenomena around him. So Guru Nanak, after accepting creation as something real and beautiful, he expresses a great sense of wonder when he is faced with the cosmic phenomena. And this is the essence of his great and exuberant nature mysticism. He falls into a divine rapture when he conceives of this vast, endless and infinite universe. So in this famous piece, in one of his famous works, which has been called the Arati, he thinks of heaven as the salver, sun and moon as the lamps, star as pearls, air as the incense, and so on, and all these elements conjoining to form the cosmic invocation to the Supreme Being. That is the cosmic Arati, which retains its grandeur, and this Arati has even been translated by Rabindranath Tagore. In Sikhism, the concept of love also holds great importance. So here it needs to be emphasized that the term love, it denotes not only loving God but also His creation. And when this fundamental aspect declines, what happens? The society becomes rough and hollow. Sorry. So it is like a positive energy which, when obstructed and not allowed to flow freely, so this positive energy, when it is obstructed, what it does is, through one's heart, mind and body, it converts into selfishness, anger, pride and consequent destruction. So the reality that humans create around themselves is actually a reflection of their inner state. And the current instability of the natural system of the earth, that is the external environment of human beings, is actually a reflection of the instability and pain within humans. So we can say that the increasing barrenness of the earth's terrain is actually a reflection of the emptiness that is there within humans. So therefore, a lifestyle which is based on the principles of Sikhism is a life of harmony with other individuals and with other beings and with other forms as well. So a true Sikh is for individual human rights and for environment and for justice for all. So a major emphasis in Sikhism is on truthful living. And to quote the Gurbani, it says that truth is higher than everything, but higher still is truthful living. And this truthful living can be interpreted to imply environmentally conscious and responsible living in this case. So the emphasis is on mastery over the self and the discovery of the self, rather than mastery over nature or other external forms and beings. So we can say that the canons of Sikhism, they are in fine tunes with the music of ecology. And the Sikhs, they use the term ecosophism, which literally means the wisdom of the universe. And such wisdom is required for the promotion of sustainable and peaceful ecology. So moving towards the end of my discourse, I would say that the current scenario, it forces us to look at the world's religious heritage and reinterpret them to our present problem. In the context of environment, we can say that religions hold great importance. But what people are doing today, they are being lured by materialistic things and thereby are drifting themselves away from religion. And the thing is that what they do is they just treat it as a higher power. And there are many things in our religious scriptures apart from just being a higher power. So what we need to do is we need to revisit our texts to understand the importance of nature and environment. And if we claim to be religious, we need to equally respect nature. So human beings, unfortunately, what they do is they mold religion and nature according to their own convenience. They interpret the religious texts in the way which suits their needs. And in the same way, they use or rather abuse nature in the style that suits them best. So the scriptures should not be considered only as a religious text for worship, but they should also be studied and analyzed in social, political, philosophical, and cultural and natural context. So the above proposition, this can be substantiated with the fact that all the religions that I've just discussed, now they have taken into account and they have shown the trajectories of environmental concern. So while studying these ancient religious texts, it should be kept in mind that they do not directly answer our questions. They are not addressing our problems of global ecological crisis or pollution or depletion of resources. So while speaking of humans and nature, they relate to earlier experiences which perhaps differ from the context to what they said long ago in a context which is not ours. So through a careful interpretation, we may find relevant insights and paradigms which speak to our situation. For example, the Noah's Ark, it serves as a paradigm of the survival and the need for survival technology. That is, humans in one boat with all other species. So this is the saving ark which carries human survivors together with representatives of all species to a new beginning. So from the above discussion, it can be derived that all these scriptures, they have their broad base on established relationship between human and nature. But the only difference being that somewhere we find that nature is worshipped, but in other ways, and in others it is not. But no negativity towards nature has been observed in any of these. So this is what I would like to say. And before winding up, I'm reminded of a quote by Hubert Reeves, an astrophysicist, which you would find very interesting, and I would like to share that with you. Hubert Reeves says that man is the most insane of all species. He worships the invisible God and destroys a visible nature, unaware that the nature he is destroying is this God he is worshipping. So thank you so much. That is all what I have to offer in this. And thank you for bearing with me and for the patient listening. It's over to you, Abhilashi.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thank you so much. To be very honest, I don't know what to say, or rather, I don't know how to say. I am lost for words, actually. It was such an interesting lecture in terms of understanding the different religious texts of the world, and also in terms of creating a pathway to move ahead as to how to move about in our connection to understanding each one of them. So it was really informative on your part, to be very precise. And to all my participants, I would just like to say that Kulwant sir has recently been awarded his PhD degree, and this lecture was a part of his thesis specifically, and his thesis was on a comparative study of the different ecological scriptures of the world, or the different scriptures of the world, a ecological study basically. And sir, you have just enriched us with your exciting, with your informative knowledge, and all thanks to you, sir. I would now like to take up some questions. First of all, I have a question from Shraddha Malini, madam. She says that...
Just a second.
Okay, sir. Yeah.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir, I can hear you. Shall we move ahead with our question, sir?
Yes, please.
Hello, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. We have our first question. Madam says that, what should be our attitude to care for the environment in the scriptures, selfless or self-preserving?
Can you please repeat the question?
What should be our attitude to care for the environment in scriptures, selfless or self-preserving? What should be our attitude, basically?
I think it involves both, because we have to be selfless when we have to preserve the environment. We have to be selfless in our approach. We have to sacrifice so many things if we want to preserve nature. Okay, so it is both. We just cannot be selfless, or it's not only self-preserving, because we know that environment is giving us a. So in lieu of it, we have to do preserve. We have to keep aside our selfish motives. Undoubtedly, all the nature is for us has been surviving on its basis. So when it's our time to preserve nature, we have to be selfless in our approach. That's what I have to say.
Yes, sir. We have our next question from RT madam. She says, can we do the same study of ecology in other religions or cultures, scriptures, like Christianity or any other religion?
Yes, of course we can. Because you will find issues related to nature or guidance, not issues, guidance related to nature, which has been there in almost all scriptures. So you can definitely, ecology from that perspective can be studied from any scripture you take. Yes.
Yes, sir. We have our next question by Mahar madam. She says, do you think that eco-criticism is yet to be more developed as to impact the society in a much more effective manner?
Yes, it needs to be developed because, and I would say that when we study eco-criticism, along with the study of eco-criticism, we should also, parallel way from the scriptures as well. Because if we run them parallelly, perhaps it could be more appealing to the masses, and the aim of which is there of criticism, that it needs to apprise people that, or it shows the relationship of humanity and literature and nature. So if we take religion as parallel to criticism, that would be a better way of doing, and of course, criticism can also develop in this way alongside.
Exactly, sir. Yeah. We have our next question by Sanata Basam, madam. She says, do you think that the contemporary writers have justified the theme of eco-criticism in their works?
Yes, they have done their best, and they have tried to portray the current scenario and its after effects. We have the contemporary writers, when we talk of Amitabh Ghosh, when we talk of Kamala Markandeya. So these writers, they have, from their side, they have, I would say, they have done justice to the concept of criticism in portraying this relationship. That is yes. Any other question that you like?
Yes, sir. We have a question by Mahar Gandhi, madam. She says, do you think literature today takes into account of environmental study deeply?
To some extent, yes, because now people have, or scholars have started focusing, and the writers, they have started focusing on this aspect. It has been into focus from the past 4 to 5 decades. I would say it has started now, but it has gained more prominence, in the past 1 decade, what I can see. And this, of course, is there. Yes. What else, Raj?
Yes, sir. We have next question by Chukenda Mandal, madam. She says, is literary eco-criticism helping us preserve nature in any way?
Sorry, please repeat.
Is literary eco-criticism helping us preserve nature in any way?
Yes, of course. Literary criticism, of course, it is offering its contribution in this field, and it does inspire us through different stories of the past and the present, and of the current scenario that we are facing. It does inspire the readers towards preservation of nature. But then the only thing is that many times when we read literature, the world literature, what we see is that we read it as a story. I'm not to talk of the scholars who do a research in it, but in general, we read those texts and then take it as a story and keep aside. But if we, since we all are attached to some of the other religious faiths, so if we take support of this idea or this faith in preserving the environment or environment conservation, you can say, perhaps we will be more deeply into it. So this will be a more deeper way of, going into this aspect.
Then we have the next question by Sania Hamza, madam. She says, do you think literary texts help us to develop environmental awareness?
Which texts?
Literary text, any kind of literary text helps us to develop the environmental awareness.
Yes, of course they do. So when you read those texts, when you find the stories in the kind of wrath which is shown there in about nature, that the kind of devastation that is being caused, that is nature is tampered with. So they do, like every other text, they do give us a lesson of what is to be done in future, or how humans are to act in order to save themselves from devastation. So they do give those facts. To what extent one does it, that needs to be seen. Yes, please.
Yes, sir. Sanjukta Datta, madam, says, how well is modern Indian English literature dealing with the theme of protecting and promoting nature?
Which
Modern Indian English literature.
Okay. As far as I can recall, there are few texts which have focused primarily on this. Now, earlier the texts were written, they do make a mention about nature, but you'll find the collective texts that have, through the aspect of nature, they have to give some message. Now, in the contemporary days, when we talk of Amitabh Ghosh, okay, now when you read his work, you will see that, of course, he has depicted nature's both sides, the positive and the negative, very clearly. So, of course, these types of texts can contribute, but then I don't think many of them are there. Perhaps if more can be written and read, that would be better. Although there have been earlier texts, and most of them have either shown the settings of nature that they've been set in the natural background, that is there, but how much we can draw our focus or attention towards nature or dealing with nature. Those types of texts are very few. But of course, yes, they are contributing to the preservation of nature, and they can help in this cause. They are helping in this cause.
Yes, so we'll take up one last question. It is by Dechen Sevpasar. She asked, how can you, in a way, let us know about the importance of various scriptures in this current pandemic situation?
Okay. Now, when we talk about the current pandemic situation, now again we can relate it with the natural or the environmental aspect. Now, what these scriptures, they have taught us to live solidarity, to establish harmony. So, where on the side they have, okay, to talk about nature that has already been discussed. Scriptures do apprise us and they do guide us about living in solidarity with others, with our fellow as well. So, of course, in the pandemic situation, these scriptures now, they are, as I mentioned, that these scriptures are not only as a text to be worshipped, but they are to be read in different contexts, the context of society, economically, politically, and of course in the natural context. So when you read in the context of the society, you will find many such things, how to live in a society, how to exist, how to remove that discrimination between the class and the caste, which was being witnessed in the pandemic, and which was to some extent it was a positive sign that we see these differences being removed to some extent. And then also we could see that how nature had responded when we were in a lockdown. Okay, we could see the rivers being clean, we could see a pollution-free atmosphere, and we could see animals roaming on the street. So what was it? In fact, we could say that we humans were the virus for the nature. Okay, have been troubling them. So it was like a rejuvenation for nature, and very for human beings that when they were locked down, perhaps if scriptures, they could revert to their scriptures, and they have, of course, to seek guidelines as to how to live as a society, and we could see that. And and this pandemic, it also served as when it removed all the class distinctions. We could see people adopting those practices of our culture that were there in the scriptures, helping out others, helping the needy, is something that came from our scriptures. How to live in the society, and then the concept of greeting others with folded hands, and the kind of hygiene that is to be maintained, then the recital of mantra. And so many such things that people thought that they could hold inspiration from the scriptures during this pandemic to fight this cause as well. And undoubtedly, these scriptures, they cover all aspects of human life. And if we revert to them for any aspect, we find some solutions for their life. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir. So we have come to the end of the session, and sir, all I can say is that you have enriched us to an extent like never before. We have really been enlightened. We have really been privileged enough to listen to you and to get to know about the religious scriptures, about the references in relation to ecology. So, sir, it was informative yet exciting, lucid yet thoughtful. Thanks a lot, sir. Thank you once again.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And to all my dear participants, the feedback link will be posted half an hour after the end of the lecture on the description box. Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot once again.